recorded live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the blacksci-fi.com website. Today is the May 27th, 2016 show, or what most people would call the Memorial Day edition of Genesis Science Fiction Radio. And today I have the rare honor of having somebody who is more than a triple threat. They're a quintuple threat. Tonight's special guest is Geoffrey Thorne. And if you happen to tune in a few seconds ago, he was telling us just how little his television experience was. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but we will talk about it. But he is listed as a rebel, an ex-actor, a producer, a writer, and an illustrator. And I'm sure that's probably just scratching the surface. But welcome to the show, Geoffrey. How are you?
Thank you very much, William. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm great. It's a Friday afternoon on a Memorial Day weekend. What's to complain about?
I'm guessing you're West Coast. Where are you today?
Yeah, I'm sitting in my destroyed so-called office in Los Angeles. It looks like somebody's Radio Shack blew up in here, and that's my problem, and I'm sharing it with the world as part of my recovery.
Well, you know, the first thing when you have a problem is admitting it. So you've gotten past that point. Let me ask you this. I mean, like when you talk about it looks like an exploded Radio Shack, when I turn around and I look at all the crap in my office, I'm an IT guy, so I've got carcasses of computers laying around, parts.
Yeah,
and
I
opened up a box yesterday. Let me just say this real quick. There was a 5 1/4-inch floppy disk drive in it.
Holy crap! Those kids don't even know what you're talking about. They don't even know what you just said. It sounded like English, but no.
They're probably wondering, okay, did Thomas Edison invent that one? Almost.
No, I have every Macintosh since the first one. Still, I have never thrown a computer away.
Hey, dude, those are worth money. Those are worth money.
I got a Mac
also, well, here's the thing: if you have every single one and they're all working, there was just a big article that showed up on national media, I think 2 weeks ago, about a kid who had the exact same circumstance that you did. So that is a BFD,
wow.
to gearheads and to media people. And if all of yours are working, are they all working?
I believe so. They're sitting in my storage facility. I only stopped using them because I had better equipment to use.
Yeah. Well, since your office is probably at home, right? You don't have like a...
Yeah, this is a home office. And we call it office, but it's really a junkyard right now.
Well,
it's a straight-up junkyard.
It's Live Workspace, I think, is the official title.
God love you. God love you.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Well, think about it. Seriously, if you want a little guidance on that, I'll drop you my information because I've been in the IT field since 1970, and there could be an avenue for you to donate those, with your name, the little gold plaque and stuff, and to like a museum type entity. Well, I'm just telling you. Obviously, you want to take off all your Obviously, you want to take off all your porn, your illegal music and movies and stuff, but other than that, if they're working, they're fine.
Well, that's good advice. I will make sure to take away my my Ruth Kadoji number 4 or whatever. My Japanese hentai porn off my old computer.
Oh, see, I'm half Japanese, half black, so there might be something. We could talk a little bit later about what you have to offer up.
Oh my God! No.
Well, I'm kind of like a Black Science Fiction Society's resident Japanegro, and I like that. I love that because it gives me a little bit of cachet. But let's talk about you. Enough about me. Everybody knows about me. They know all my picadillos. They know about the ankle bracelet. They know why I can do this show every Friday night because my ass has to be at home. Mm-hmm. But first of all, where did you grow up? I'm not placing an accent, but probably that's because you spent as much time in L.A. as you have.
No, actually, it's the opposite. I moved around a lot. I lived in D.C., briefly in Atlanta, San Francisco, Berkeley, overseas several years. I have, according to one of my college professors, a standard generic American accent.
It's almost generic. I think the most generic one is Seattle.
Yeah,
because
I've heard people from there.
Dude, I grew up talking like J.J. Walker. That's how I grew up speaking. But then when I decided to get into radio, I got, this was back in the early 70s, I got tapes of news broadcasts from Seattle because I was in the Midwest.
Oh, wow.
And I listened to those, I practiced those, and developed a very non-regional accent. Because, being in radio, I didn't want to be in the 1400s on the AM dial for the rest of my life.
No, that's the desert. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
the black church things.
That's
true.
So you're in good company, my friend. I
learned from the best.
That's on purpose. I learned from the best.
and so when you were growing up, since you've done so many things, when you were growing up, what were kind of your main interests? Because you look at, writer, illustrator, and you think about, well, every kid picks up crayons and, going through school, you have writing classes. What kinds of things were of interest to you, let's say from your preteens to your going into your teens, because a lot of that is formative in terms of where you end up.
Very, very formative. In fact, I would call it a crux point. Up until probably the age of 13 and a half, 14, I would have been describing myself as an illustrator and a writer. I wasn't shy, but I didn't like talking to people I didn't know well, so I was quiet, reserved. That's a good way to describe it. I'm not certain my dad particularly liked that part of my personality, so trying to make a long story short, he sort of suggested that I might try to be an actor for a while. Came out of nowhere to me. I was like, what are you, high? Why would I even think about that? What have you done with my father, you insane person? And at the time, we were living in Washington, D.C., and they have the Duke Ellington School of the Arts there. And unlike the performing arts in New York, the Ellington School also allowed for illustration and sculpting and things like that. They didn't just do performance. So it was a true art school. Yeah, they wanted to cover all bases, almost all bases. The only thing they didn't do at the time, which they do now, is writing. They didn't cover writing in specific. So at that time, I was thinking of myself as an illustrator, and I was going to go to that school. And my father was like, well, since you're going up to there anyway, why don't you audition for the theater department? There's a much longer version of this story. But I said, all right, Dad, that's cool. I got my portfolio. If you think I would be okay with that, I don't know what a monologue is. So I memorized Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, sort of dramatized The Raven. And I went up there. And when I got there, because they would let you double major at the time, at least that's what they had told us in the paperwork. So it wasn't going to be a big deal if I got into one. My dad's idea, I think, also was it would double my chances of getting into the school, because you couldn't get in if you couldn't pass one of the auditions, you weren't getting in, whether you were, good at regular academics or not. So I think you might have figured it would hedge your bet. You'll screw up one, but you'll probably get the other. But when I got up there, they told us that day, basically, no, we're sorry. The paperwork that said you could double major was premature, or we didn't get the new paperwork out yet. But the DC school board has basically told us it's too much time devoted. You'd be devoting too much time to the arts and not enough to your regular schoolwork, right? Because you still have to do all the normal high school stuff. You can't do both. You can only do one major plus high school. You can't do two majors plus high school. So you have to choose one. You have to choose right now. I was like, what? And they didn't have cell phones back then, so there was no calling Dad to ask for advice. It wasn't like that. So I flipped the coin. I flipped the quarter. It came up heads. I went and auditioned for the theater department. I got into the theater department, and for the next 15 years, I was an actor. Roughly. Cool. 15. Yeah. And
but that probably didn't stop you, did it? From the other creative arts that you were interested in. Well,
I wouldn't say it stopped me. I never stopped writing and I never stopped drawing. But I will say this: after having been a reserved sort of person, being involved in the theater is an incredibly immersive, very exciting, especially at that time of life, activity. And so a great many things sort of opened up to me, not in the way like I didn't understand that this was out there, but more like you had like a billion different kinds of social life, a billion different kinds of ways of expressing, and you had a group of people who were, I don't
you had an affinity with.
Well, more than that, they had an affinity for anything interesting. You had, unlike other high schools, where it sort of breaks into cliques and everyone sort of keeps to their own, and there's a lot of mockery between groups and things like that. At Ellington, it was the opposite. It was like, what's interesting that you do? Be interesting. Be as interesting as you possibly can. And it didn't even matter what the interesting thing was, singer, dancer, writer, and this was when hip-hop was getting going, breakdancing was getting going. I mean, it was a very interesting time to be a young teenager, and it was a perfect birth for a person like me because there was no judgment. Nobody judged anybody, really. They just, except on the quality of your work. If you sucked, then you got mocked. But if you were really good at something, people wanted to see it. It was great.
Right.
It was great.
Now that that sounds like an ideal, nurturing environment. You know, one that is more rare than not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Especially. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You can't. I cannot oversell the 2 years I spent at the Ellington School at Ellington. There is no place more influential upon me as an artist than those 2 years. Nothing more significant than that.
Now,
great.
I mean, obviously you were getting the chops. You know, you were learning the art.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? The impetus from the school that pushed you into doing the little teeny tiny TV that we're only going to talk about for a second? Well, I mean, seriously, Jarvis sent me this promo picture where you're in uniform. What show was this for? Dukes of Hazzard?
That was, oh my God. You suck. How dare you? How dare you say Dukes of Hazzard? Almost. It was In the Heat of the Night. Carol O'Connor.
Oh, okay. You know what? Now that you say that, of course, I apologize. But I'm not like a lot of people who will crack on folks because they had to do. If you had done the Dukes of Hazzard, it would make as little difference to me as doing In the Heat of the Night because it not only is it work, but when you think about the fact that less than 1.5% of the people in the LA area are employed full-time doing television or movies. 1.5%. People don't realize that 98.5% of everybody in Hollywood who aspires to TV or movies has to have another job. Unless, of course, you're somebody like Jack Nicholson who can get, $20 million for a movie. But when you're starting out, so, I mean, the fact that you made that cut, the fact that you're black, the fact that you at least now don't speak any kind of stylized urban dialect. I mean, these are all things that work against you in that industry, not for you.
Well, yes
so please don't think that. And I apologize for if I did give you any insult, but dude, you're on TV.
I'm just joking. No, it's a big deal. When you look at it in the terms you described, it absolutely is a big deal, and it's somewhat a big deal at that time since there were fewer of us doing any of it, fewer black people.
Right.
But I will say this. There are a stack of Irish actors that have really thick Irish accents when they're just being themselves, right? But if you didn't see them being themselves, you think they were English actors or American actors or whatever. Part of the job is being able to flip that switch. I basically flipped between being a cop, lawyer, or a thug on every job, and frankly, it got old after a while. I was like, this isn't the kind of work that I grew up. It's not the kind of stuff that made me want to be a creative person. It became boring. It became
wasn't feeding your soul. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you could put it in those terms. I think what it is, and you're starting to see more of it now after 20 freaking years. But I'm a Star Trek guy. I'm a Star Wars guy. I was at the time a Lord of the Rings guy. I was a comic book guy. So all those things I still am, but nobody was accepting black people in those kinds of environments, really, with the exception maybe of Star Trek.
But only for the first 6 minutes of the show, though.
Yeah, I need to stop. You need to stop that. You can't talk bad about that's my baby. You can't talk about my baby like that.
No. Hey, come on. I mean, speaking truth to anything is not bad because. I mean, stop and think about that. You beam down with the captain and the rest, and you immediately die, and that's a tough way to build a resume.
Wait a minute. You have to look at the entire. See, here we go. Now you see you foolishly taking us on a tangent.
Dude, it's a sci-fi show. Go ahead, knock it out.
Started in the 60s, in the mid-60s. And if you look at each Star Trek era, okay, in the original, you had a black woman as part of the bridge crew, the command crew. You had an Asian man as part of the command bridge crew, flying the freaking ship.
Cold War, you had a Russian after the first year.
Yes, eventually you had a Russian. And I have to say, my first experience of sci-fi, and this is also a sort of a pivotal experience in my life, Star Trek has kind of permeated my life. My first memory of being exposed to science fiction and being exposed to the arts in a specific way was sitting on my dad's lap watching an episode of Star Trek in black and white on his crappy television in D.C., and it was the M5 episode, the one with a black Richard Daystrom, who created all the technology that the Starfleet uses. He created all of the computer systems, and he was a black guy. And he'd come up with this new one, the M5, that was supposed to make all the others look like a joke, and it was fantastic, the ultimate computer. And he wasn't treated like, oh, look, you're a credit to your race. You know, nobody was patting him on the head. He showed up and he came to play. And everyone gave him the respect he was due. And he was a great actor and a great character. And I watched this, and that was kind of like a lightning bolt to me, right? And unlike a lot of people who are like, oh, man, I can't wait to use that I can't wait to get in that uniform. You know, I was like, how do they make all that stuff? Right. You know? And my dad told me how they make stuff. Somebody wrote the lines, and the actors did. This is back when I was like 7, you know? And I was like, oh, man, I want to do that, you know. But when I got to do it, you know, many years later, when I'm in my late teens and I'm coming to Hollywood, their parts just weren't there. They weren't writing that part. So unless you were lucky enough to get something on the Star Trek The Next Generation, you weren't in the sci-fi movie. Or if you were like you just said, you're in for a few minutes and then you're dead because you had to be the first one out, right? Horror movie or sci-fi, the black guy's the first one out, you know? Right. And I was just like, I got to a point in my acting career where it's like, I was looking down the barrel of another 30 years of success, quote unquote, you know, because I was working. It wasn't like I had a little average nothing career. I had an actual acting career going. And I was like, this is the rest of my life? I don't think so. Nope, I'm out. And my agents were upset, and a great many people in my social circle were very upset. There was a vibe of like, how dare you turn this amazing thing down? And I was like, yeah, I got to go. That's my time, Cleveland. This is not for Jeff.
Well, I mean, you were lucky. You were lucky to be able to do that. I mean, you know, first of all, their anger is over the fact that you were, quote, successful, unquote, and you were turning your back on it, as if that you had to be the great black hope for television. And then you were very lucky because you did not have Martin Luther King Jr. saying you have to stay on your show like he did to Nichelle Nichols.
Nichelle, but see again. With Nichelle, she really was one of like 4 people on television. For me,
absolutely,
many of my peers went on to become, some of them big movie stars, some of them, and the rest of them basically just kept working, and they're still working today, and they have really nice lives, families, and all that. When I quit acting, I went into a period of time where I was absolutely broke. I had no industry connections. I could not rekindle my writing career. I went from, on top of the world to basically bottom of the pile in the space of about 8 months. And then I stayed down there for another few years. It wasn't like a lateral, okay, I'll just go be a writer now. I went into I destroyed my whole life, and I lived in hell for a while.
Right.
It was not pretty, not fun, nothing glamorous or sexy about it. It was awful. And I was 10 years later in my writing career than all the people that were graduating college and just jumping in and calling up their friends like, hey, can I be on your sitcom? I'll do anything.
Sure.
You know, I wasn't that guy. You know,
Yeah.
so I had to grind for several years. It was, I mean, I could talk about just that period, and to remind people, it isn't what you said earlier. It ain't gravy, you know. It's grinding, and there's a component of luck. It's grinding plus luck, and I was lucky twice, right? I was lucky as an actor, and very lucky because that's on a certain basic level. I didn't really care about acting. I think one of the things that helped me as an actor was it never broke my heart when I didn't get a part. Right? I didn't care. I literally did not care. I was like, okay, you know, like very, very rarely would there be a part that I'd be like, oh man, I really wanted to be depressed about it. But my friends who were all actors were living and dying on this stuff, and you know, it was like being in depression for 3 weeks because they didn't get that 5-line part on MacGyver, you know, and I was like, really? MacGyver? As much as I like MacGyver, you know, your character didn't even have a name. You know, you were like bug number 5. You know, but that was their whole life. That was what they were here for. They had their hearts and souls in it, and I really just didn't. You know, I was like, yeah, this is cool. I'm enjoying it.
Would that be attributable to? I think that's mostly attributable to a whole different attitude that you had, because first of all, you were more mature about the salt of acting. Well, no. I mean, I understand the desperation of no money and things like that, but if you were really truly desperate instead of determined, then you'd still be acting today. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
Because one of the things that Hollywood does very well is they foster and promote and permeate every part of your existence with desperation. With desperation. I mean, look at these monsters out there who are getting, you know, cosmetic surgery that makes them look like carp. You know, out of some desperate need to conform to, you know, all of the evil that we already know. All right, so it's good. I think that because you weren't fully invested in the desperation, it probably freed you up a little bit to sustain the kind of setback that you had, but to keep moving forward. I mean, would that be a fair characterization?
Well, it's definitely a flattering one. I mean, it paints me in the sort of hero of my own story kind of light. But you have to remember, I was very young. I was, 21, 20 years old when I made this giant life-changing decision. I had nobody advising me or giving me any sort of like, well, maybe take a couple of years and do it a slower way, and you can make a more lateral move and remain, you know, somewhat on top and sort of meld your two careers. There was nobody like that. It was just a kid making decisions. So I would say, in retrospect, it was foolish. I would not. If I was advising my younger self, I would have told him to do different things. Not to do it, but to do it in a smarter way. I paid for it, and so I paid for it hard. I mean, it was a hard. Depending on how you want to grade success, I sold my first short story 2 years or 3 years after I quit acting. But I didn't get onto it. I didn't officially sell my first TV script. Even a story until 8 years after I got close. I was in development and I did all these other things, but I wasn't making a dime at it. I was a baseline Craigslist illustrator, freelance illustrator for all of that time. That is a lousy life. And it's humbling and it's good. It scrapes off the ego. But I would have loved to shave that period into maybe half. I didn't need the whole 8 years. I got it. Yeah, I was cool after 2. I understood after 2, but I had 6 more to go through. So it sounds brave and all that wonderful stuff, and certainly a biographer might couch it that way. But in reality, it was a stupid decision for which I paid hard. And I recovered well, I guess, but also there's a certain amount of luck involved. Paul Newman referred to it. as a tyranny of luck.
Yeah, but that's I was about to use that exact phrase. But the fact of the matter is, being in the right place at the right time is not something that you normally have control over. People always say, well, you should be prepared for anything. Well, BS on that. I'm sitting here in Chicago, and, we had storms all day, and we were supposed to have, tornadoes, but I'm not planning for the right place, right time kind of thing because, first of all, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Nobody can be on to that level. Yeah. And so, okay, so it took you a little while to get your writing done. Let me ask you this. Do you think that any of the waiting time, any of the lag time, that 8 years, was any of that due to blowback because of the way you ended your acting career, or did it just take that long to get that right time moment?
No, I think I wouldn't call it blowback. I think I napalmed my old life. I mean, again, a smart person would have sort of not burned every bridge because I did have some medium to high level connections that could have maybe eased me into the writing side of the world out here. And instead I was like, nah, I'm done with that whole thing. And all of you people, I'm done with you too. I mean, it was a childish move. But
well, scorched earth is never good. Burning all your bridges never works out very well.
Oh, it was burning is such a small term for what I did to those poor bridges.
Oh no!
Oh, the grandchildren of those bridges tell story of the burning time Jeff left. But I think on a long scale of time of a life, they made me a better writer, and it certainly made me a better human being than I would have been otherwise.
Excuse me. Let me ask you this: what was like the genre of your first short story that you sold?
The first short story I sold was to the you'll like this. It never appeared in print. I entered into the Writers of the Future contest. L. Ron Hubbard's Writers of the Future contest, not affiliated with Scientology, and I was a finalist in that, which was very prestigious at the time, but there were several finalists, and the winning stories were so long that there was no room in the print book. But getting back to Star Trek, the second thing I sold was I won second prize in the Strange New Worlds anthology contest at the time with a short story, ironically, about Richard Daystrom, the first person that I'd seen in a science fiction story on Star Trek that very first time, and so I became a officially published writer via Star Trek.
Nice. Wasn't Daystrom played by William Marshall? Wasn't it?
That's correct.
No,
William Marshall.
It was? Okay, all right.
That's right. It was William Marshall, and I wrote a story sort of about him. I got second prize, and then I was offered a non-contest section in an anthology, also Star Trek. Then I won second prize again in the same in the next volume of the contest book, and then I got offered another non-contest anthology to be in, and then they said, "Do you want to write a novel for us?" And I said, "Are you crazy? Of course. Why do you bother asking these are stupid questions? Of course I want to write a novel for you guys." And so they let me. They were crazy to do so, but they did, and it was great. And all the while I'm trying to be a screenwriter in Hollywood, doing all sorts of ridiculous shenanigans to get my scripts in front of people. And the two things sort of dovetailed together.
And excuse me. I got the allergy thing too.
Me too, brother.
And so when you look back, I mean, okay, yeah, you had a crappy 8 years, but I mean, okay, I wrote my first novel in 2001. It didn't get published till 2009. I mean, that was my 8-year dry spell,
Right.
And and so I did some other things. I turned to screenwriting, and I'm one of the very rare lucky, like you said, people. The tyranny of luck. My first 4 scripts got made, and not very many people can say that.
Wow.
But in the meantime, yes, but but you don't see my ass out there by you. I mean, we're not doing this in the same room, where I'm going, hey, let's have you talk about what you did. And so when you talk about the tyranny of luck, unless you're a well-grounded person, unless you have, some realistic expectations of the world around you, it's such a great term, man. That is just so perfect. The tyranny of luck can bring you down, and
yes,
in your case, it did not. At least you kept at it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What it is, I think what happens is, and it's a hard thing. One of my best friends is a guy called Brandon Easton, and he's a few years younger than me. Started later than me, and he's had a bumpy road to what many people would describe as success. I think he would describe it as a certain amount of success. But in the middle of it, I mean, the guy's apartment burned down, for God's sakes. That never happened.
Oh, man.
You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I think it is that it's not so much this weird sort of can-do spirit and all that kind of stuff. It's that Brandon, being able to observe Brandon helps me figure out what helped me in the past, things I wasn't aware I was doing. I can see Brandon doing. And so one of the things is you fall back on the fact that as a freelancer, you have to be able to accurately assess where you are in the market, right? For instance, there are writers who can outwrite me no matter what. On my best day and their worst day, I can't touch them, right?
Sure.
I have to be able to soberly assess that without ego. Oh, the fix was in. There's none of that, right? And because of that, it also gives you ability to assess your own worth in a hopefully accurate, reasonable way, because you're judging it based on the marketplace. Can I sell? Why do I sell? What sells? What doesn't sell? Right? And so you can fall back on the very firm, it's not an opinion thing. Yes, I can actually do this. Therefore, it's just a matter of time and a couple of breaks. And if you can stick out the time, the law of averages begins to serve you rather than serve against you, because everybody has a chance meeting with somebody incredible every once in a while. Everybody gets into the elevator with, oh, my God, it's you, and you maximize that certainly by living in a place like Los Angeles or New York where those people are just sort of wandering around. But you also let it be known, I want to do this. I'm a writer. I thought you were an actor. Yeah, well, that was then. I'm a writer.
Yeah.
So no matter what you happen to be doing at the moment, when you say I had another job, my day job was drawing pictures for lunatics and taking their money and putting it in the bank and paying my rent with it. But in reality, everybody knows Jeff's a writer. And at some point, someone calls you and says, didn't you tell me you were a writer? Yeah. Well, I got this thing I can't do anything with. Maybe you can do something with it. It's a writing thing. And all of a sudden, you're kind of off to the races, because all you have to do is say yes a lot, early on. And then you get this reputation of, hopefully, if you're good at it, and that's another component that people overlook a lot, you kind of have to actually be good unless you're related to someone. Like, people don't hire you for nothing unless you're the child of, or they're dating you, or you are their parent or daughter or whatever. They really hire you because you're an asset. They're going to pay for your skills to do something. So if your skills aren't up to snuff, you're not going to get that so-called lucky break because you don't deserve it.
That's true.
And so,
you get one. You get one,
yes,
and then you never see it again.
And that's it.
You never see it again.
Right, doesn't turn into anything else. And that's why I always try to tell people, younger writers now, you should think of yourself as a gunslinger with a belt of bullets. And if you've only got one bullet in your belt, you might as well not step out into the street because you're going to get killed. Right?
Sure.
The biggest question in our town is not what have you got, it's what else have you got. If you don't have much else, nobody really cares, because anybody can do it once. That's just a fluke. People want to know you're going to be around for a while. So, can you do it day in, day out? Can you do it on if I call you up on a Friday night and it needs to be done by Saturday afternoon, are you that person? And that's not a trick you can play. You have to kind of grind it out slow so that a year from now you can do it fast. Right? So that person
a lot of people don't take the time to develop the skills, not the talent.
Yes.
You know, they may or may not have talent, but if you don't know that a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, or if you don't know that whatever you show in Act 1 that's kind of out of ordinary, you damn well better use it in Act 3. I mean, there are some fundamentals that people people come to me and they go, I want to write a book, and I go, well, what kind of book do you want to write? Because they go, well, can you help me write a book? And I've told this line before, and I go, okay, so what do you want to write about? And most of these people, I would say about 75% of them say, well, I want to write the story of my life because I think it would be interesting to other people. And I swear to you, you have no idea how scarred my tongue is from biting it to keep from saying, well, I don't see how that's going to work because you're boring the hell out of me already.
Wow.
But here's the thing. These are people who have not invested in telling a story.
Right.
Okay, if you can't invest in telling a story and you want to be a storyteller, what kind of nonsense is that? Let me tell you, I wrote my first book in 2001. Okay, it didn't get published till 2009. Every other writer who I ran into, because I was in writing groups just to see what other people were doing. And excuse me for saying so, but do you know what the black business plan for getting published and making money was?
Uh-oh.
It was, I'm going to get my book over to Oprah, and she's going to put me in her book club, and then I'm on Easy Street. That was their business model. Dude, I swear to you, and I couldn't understand. I said, well, have you ever taken an English class? No. Do you know anything about writing? No. But I got a story. And I honestly, the thing that I despair of most is people who don't study their own art, study their intended art. Well, because if you don't have the fundamentals, how are you going to be successful?
I think what it is, and it's hard because if you do the thing well in the arts, whatever you do well, it looks easy. Right? And unlike the athletic kinds of arts, like dancing or even sports is even better, people don't immediately, all of that stuff, they assume practice. They assume hard work behind the game. They know that for every game that you're watching, these guys are basically living in practice every day, all day long, after practice. The times that they get to play play in the sense of going to clubs and things like that. It's actually quite small in the scheme of their year, right? But with writers, especially writers, and to some degree, I think visual artists, unless they're just amazing and it's scary how good they are, the average person goes, oh, there's a book. They don't put any thought into how long it took to make it, how many revisions it went through, arguments with editors, shopping it around, getting told no 50 times before one publisher said yes, we'll publish. They don't factor any of that in. They're like, oh, it's a book, it's a complete book, it's a lot of words on several pages. I can fill up a book of pages of words. And on some level, some of them have enough gusto to go fill up those pages. And I would say a small percentage of them are Mozart. And that first book they write with no training whatsoever is freaking amazing. I hate that guy because that guy's in my way. But he exists. That person exists. Shut up. He exists. But what the problem is that the average person, everyone thinks they are that guy. Most of us are not that guy.
And I think you're right about not seeing the work behind, the man behind the curtain who's actually pulling the strings, the person who has to make the plot, all of the things that go into writing a good story.
It's boring.
Yeah.
It's sexy.
Yeah.
They want to have written. They don't want to write. And that's a hard distinction to get across to people. They want to have already written the thing and be getting all the applause for it. But I'm suffering through right now the last 10 pages of a novella that I promised to write. And you'd think after all these years of professional writing and writing my novels and comics and all that other crap that there would be no sweat factor. But it's me wrestling the beast to get it to be the way I want it to be in the right word count, and maybe it's as good as I think, maybe it's less than I think. I don't know. It's a profession where the better you get, the harder it gets, not the easier. Most people aren't up for it. They're just not. Plus, it's a lot of alone time being a writer. There's a lot of, no, I can't go do that. I have to stay home and write. You know, most people are more social than you need to be a writer. They don't turn. They're not. You know, they're not capable of turning down the barbecue or the family trip because they have to finish the last 3 chapters by, you know, May 1st or whatever. But real writers, that's how they're built. They don't have to think about it. They're just built that way. So a lot of things there are a lot of factors that go into what makes a real, quote unquote, real writer versus someone who's never going to really do it. But a large portion of it is they don't actually understand what the job actually is. And when they get to it, I think it pulls them up short. Just like I get pulled up short if I try to step on a court with the Warriors. You know, it's just not happening, dude. You know. So.
Well, let's pivot for a little while. I'm curious about your method. Okay, so you know when you let's talk about. Well, you're working on a novella right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to talk about plot or anything, but when you sit down and you've made the commitment in your head to produce this novella, tell us a little bit about what comes next for you. How do you structure your writing? Do you put together a creative universe and then populate it? Do you pick your characters first and then whatever? What is your process?
A little bit. It depends on the. If, for instance, this novella is for the second of the Pangea anthologies that the editor requested a second installment of the character I created for them.
Sure.
So the universe is already created in this case. I don't have to do a lot of brain work on that. I can flesh it out as I like, but I don't have to build it fundamentally. For the most part, the characters are already created because I'm carrying them over from the first story. In this case, for this particular anthology, there has been a sort of a time progression inside the world of the story between the first anthology and the second anthology. So I was hip to what has been going on politically in the rest of the world that's going on, what the other writers have been doing and all that kind of stuff. And did I have a story that might fit into this scheme? So I said, well, my guy's kind of a detective. All that big political stuff doesn't really touch his life directly. However, if you wanted to, I could do something like X. And so me and the editor was like, oh, that's neat. And what about this? I was like, I don't know if I can use that, but I could do this other thing. And he's like, yeah, that's cool. All right, fine. And so you have a sort of a loose agreement about the general shape of the story. And then in this particular case, because the editor knows me and knows my work very well, I would write out, I don't know, a paragraph, maybe 2 paragraphs to say, here's the gist of the story. Is it cool with you? Right? Basically, does Act 1, 2, and 3 jive with what we talked about on the phone? I fleshed out a couple of bits here. Do they make sense to you? Is there anything that contradicts anything that somebody else has done in the same book? Right? He signs off on all of that stuff in theory, which in this case he did. It doesn't always work that way, but in this case it did. And so then I sit down, and if it were a novel, then there would probably be a period of time where I outline in relative detail, probably a 20 to 30 page document, all the events of all the salient events of the novel, plot, and emotional stuff that is most important to telling of the story. And then having that as a sort of a blueprint, then I just begin to write and let it flow, knowing that I have to follow a particular roadmap. But that within the roadmap, nobody can tell me I can't turn off the turnpike and have a drink at this really cool bar right here, right? So that's kind of where the fun gets in. So with the novella, since it's shorter and we've already sort of worked out the bones, you kind of just dive right in and hope you didn't screw something up in terms of the planning, and then you just go. And so, but the problem with that, of course, is without a very tight structure in advance, you can come into sort of either plot, well, oh, I didn't think about that. In this case, that wasn't the issue. Or an emotional thing that pops up in the writing. While you're writing it, you go, oh, my God, I forgot that this character feels this way about X, and now I put him into this situation, which limits my ability to plausibly get him from point B to C, because as I've established him already, he probably wouldn't go through that door. So now I have a problem. Do I make him go through the door because I need it for the story, or do I have to figure another way to get him around point C to D without going through C, but allows him to be himself as we've established him? And that's when I say I'm wrestling, it is that sort of a bump But that's also part of the nature of the job, because you get to these weird sort of cruxes where you're like, oh, yeah, or, oh, forgot about that, or whatever it is.
And the fun part of it is, sometimes if circumstances dug a hole,
yeah,
sometimes the adventure is getting the hell out of that hole, getting out cleverly, and there is joy in writing to be able to accomplish that, especially if you're in someone else's universe. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to put your personality and your spin and your particular bent, within someone else's matrix, and that's not as easy as people. I just did one too, and it's not as easy as people say. But when you manage to pull it off well, and people go, "This is a good addition to this universe," that's pretty satisfying. Now, is your preference for writing speculative fiction?
People ask me that. I would, not a lot, but occasionally, like, basically, why do you write this stuff?
Right.
And the answer is, I'm going to steal a line from Stephen King. What makes them think I have the choice? I write the stories that occur to me. Like, it's not like I'm shoving that really great American novel about the collapse of the financial industry. I'm shoving that off to the side to tell my story about dragon riding spies. It's like the first one does not cross my mind that way. It just doesn't occur to me. So I write. I prefer speculative fiction on a political level, sort of, because when I started anyway, there weren't a lot of us doing it. I wanted to be one of the people who got to do it. Now there's a bunch more. A lot of people in the, I guess, not millennial, but Generation Y, I guess, came up, and there's a lot of people behind me. Like let's say there were 10 guys doing it when I started, and now there's like 500 people. So and some of them are amazing. Like N.K. Jemisin is amazing. Is an amazing freaking writer. Nora Jemisin, go and buy her books because holy crap. So there's a bigger field and there's a lot more diversity. I mean, within the black writing of science fiction, there's a lot more. But for me, I just want to make sure everybody realizes that everybody gets to play. So when stories occur to me about gay characters or female characters or gay female characters or Latin characters or Asian, whatever it is, and yes, God forbid, black, I just write them. I'm not worried about, is this diverse or not diverse, or is this sci-fi or not sci-fi. I just write what occurs to me, unless someone's paying me to write what occurs to them. So, I mean, TV is me writing for that. But even with that, it's still kind of you pitch out ideas and they say yes or no. So it's still kind of you, but writing you in their way for their thing. So, the short answer is I just prefer, the books I read and the stuff that I love and touches my heart comes from the speculative world. But I also like crime stories. I also like the occasional just straight up drama that has no magic or violence, or it's just an interesting story, like what's it called, The Goldfinch, or there's a couple of like what you would just call like general fiction, I guess they call it, stuff like that. And I like. It turns out I also like period romance novels, which I just discovered like last year. Who knew? But I don't think I'll ever write one. But I like reading them. I just like it. I never saw myself in those things made by other people, so I said, "Fuck it, I'll make." Oh! I swore.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. I mean, like I said, first of all of those words that we try to avoid when we do stuff, put a podcast or a radio show like this together, the teenage kids already know those words,
Yeah, I promised I would be good, though. But I just was like, you know what? There's nothing stopping me from doing it. If nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. And now there's a bunch of other people doing it, so I don't have that excuse. Sure. But now I'm in the habit, and I just like it. So, and those are the stories that occur to me. But if you want to read something that I wrote that isn't that, go and buy my novel, Better Angels, because it's freaking awesome, and it has no magic, no aliens, no sci-fi, no nothing, just people doing stuff. And it's just what occurred to me. So,
When you think about, that's writing for You obviously the novella is for someone else's creative universe. Tell me a little bit about what happens when all of a sudden you think of an idea that you think has grown in your mind or struck you, full grown into what you can put together into a novel. Because obviously you don't have to do a lot of things in someone else's universe that you have to do for yourself. In your creative process, how do your ideas come to you? Do they come to you more character-driven or situational? Or, for me, mine are suggested by social justice. Okay.
Oh, I see what you mean. That's interesting. I will say this. I look back on my body of work a little while ago, and I realized that the single recurring theme that goes through most of it is, what does it mean when you say you love something or someone? What are you willing to do for it? What is the quality that we call love actually translate into in reality?
Sure.
And I would love to be able to say I consciously chose to do that as a theme, but I didn't. I looked back and I was like, wow, this stands out. That said, anything really, I've written things because I got mad about something, and I was like, no, screw that. I'm not letting that stand, and this thing that I'm writing is my argument, and then sometimes you'll just be walking down the street or hanging out with friends and be like, it would be cool if this happened. And then that turns into a story. The novels are, the novels that I've written, I say even the Star Trek novels sort of appeared mostly fully formed, and then it was just hurry up and write this down before you forget everything. I've only completed 4 novels, and all of them have been things that basically the large tent poles of the novel just were in my head one day, and I was like, holy crap, that's kind of fun. And then you sit down and you start banging it out. But of course, then it becomes the real job of writing, and you have to make things work and blah blah blah. But the novels, but the novels were just these sort of big giant stories that were just like, if there was an egg in your head, it hatched, and you're like, oh crap, I didn't know that was in there. Better write it down before you. But with the short stories, they're just notions for the most part. They're things that occur to you while you're joking around or you watch TV. Some of the things I've written have been like, you'll watch a TV show or see a movie, and you're like, what? No, that's stupid. And then you have to go write it better because you sounded off like an idiot. You started talking too much. And so you have to now go write the right thing and show them how it's done. But it can be anything. It can be anything. I love stories. When I hear good stories, it makes me think of other good stories I might tell. So,
well, and I think if you're a good writer, other people's good writing is an inspiration, because when you see someone else bend a story to their will, at least for me, I'm always there's a little bit of amazement, but there's definitely respect for the craft. That somebody pulled that out of their butt or wherever they pulled it out, and you go, oh man, that was good the way that. Well, seriously, okay, I'm writing. I just finished a story for someone you're familiar with, Milton Davis's Dark Universe.
Oh, I love
the next anthology.
God bless.
Yeah, and you did your story. Didn't you have a story in Griots?
I have one in that and one in Steampunk. I love him.
Yeah.
He's exactly he's what I've been talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you going? By the way, are you going to his con next month?
Man, I have not been west of the Mississippi in 20 years.
Was it something we said?
No, I just haven't done it. I basically moved to LA and stayed here.
All right. That happens to so many people. Once people get there, they don't leave.
What Orson Welles said, LA is like a big, comfortable chair. You sit down in it, and then when you stand up, 20 years went by.
Yeah.
But the real truth is I can't afford it. So until these conventions start inviting me and offering to put me up.
Putting you up, yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah, I got it.
So
I got invited to a big one in Washington, D.C. about Black futurism, where blacks fit in the future of this country. And they wanted me because of writing and because of, sociology, psychology, all of these things that I know. And you know what? They I'm looking at going there, and I'd end up spending $1,500 to $2,000 to go.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I'm in the middle of other projects, and plus it's going to take 5 days out of my life. So
you can't afford it. It's literally a money sink. You'd love to do it, but you can't do it. You cannot afford to do it.
Not until my writing picks up. Not until when you see the same thing, when you see that kind of money rolling in, then you have more options, and the options are not necessarily going and buying a fast ass big ass car, okay?
Yeah, that's
or whatever. Yeah, for me it's a tool. It's a tool to do other cool things, which is like maybe go to these conventions and things like that.
That's right. I go to the ones I can drive to, basically.
There you go.
It's not like I don't like conventions. I see a lot of my friends only at conventions, sadly. But the ones that are so far away that I wouldn't even go to a convention in Vegas, which is technically drivable but still too far.
Right.
It's just too much. I can't afford it.
Yeah. When I look at your novels and some books you have out, have you kept up with your illustrating skills or anything? Are any of these covers anything that you've done?
Yes. The covers of anything from the Winterman project are done by me.
Okay.
So if you have in front of you, I don't know what you have in front of you, but if you have something entitled Redshift in front of you,
I've got I have your Amazon page up.
Okay, so Redshift, Ciccadi's Cone, Dreamnasium, Better Angels.
I think I read Redshift.
The guy's running around on Mars chasing a serial killer.
Yeah, I did read. You know what? I did read that. How long ago did you write that?
That was my first sale. That was the one I sold to Writers of the Future. So that's 2000 and Jesus Christ, holy crap! That's 2003 or 4. I think.
Yeah, I was thinking 2002, but maybe maybe 2003. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first.
Oh
my first big one.
This is kind of funny, and I'm not going to require a reciprocal read of anything I've done because I'm not that kind of guy.
Oh, I'll check something out.
No. I'm just saying. I will tell you this though. I think my plot. I think I got lucky because you know how they say that there are no more original plots out there, no more original stories.
Mm-hmm.
May I pass along mine to you?
It's your show, man. You can do whatever you want.
No. But I don't want it to be completely about me. We have to have some room for a guest. But here's my elevator pitch. My elevator pitch is simple. My trilogy tells a story of what happens in America when the country finds out that black folks have been living on the backside of the moon in secret since before Neil Armstrong got there.
That's funny. I love it. That's hysterical.
It's not quite like Kevin Wilmot, who does movies like Destination Planet Negro or anything like that, but it's still. I got lucky because I thought of a story that nobody else had done before.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, but I'm looking here. I have 2 or 3 shelves of Star Trek books. I stopped buying them because I realized that for the rest of my life, that could be all that I buy to try to keep up with them.
That's funny.
And I had to put some limits on it. Well, I'm serious. I've got, I'm looking around the corner here. There's got to be over 60, 75 Star Trek books over there in the and people just keep writing them because it's such a fascinating universe.
Yeah, I mean, I used to get into arguments with people. There was a period of time where media science fiction was sort of like the love that dare not speak its name. Like people who couldn't get jobs elsewhere would end up writing media science fiction. But by the time I got into it, some really fine writers were and continue to write tie-in books to the point where I personally, as a reader, find many of them indistinguishable from so-called original fiction. Like, they've taken such a spin out into the depths of the Star Trek universe, it might as well be its own original thing. And the editors have allowed them, I think graciously, the freedom to do so. I've read some of the best fiction I've ever read has been written by Star Trek writers, for sure. Margaret Bonanno wrote a book called Burning Dreams about Christopher Pike, the captain before Captain
Sure.
Kirk. It was like reading early Heinlein. I mean, it's just a damn fine novel. The fact that it's a Star Trek novel is something that I think the snooty, sort of hierarchical, cliquish jerk, frankly, would go, oh, well, it's just a Star Trek novel. But a real writer would want to read that book if for no other reason than to learn, because she can write.
Yeah.
But you're right. They do come out fast. Not all of them are as good as hers. Some of them are weaker. Even within a writer's own stable, they themselves would admit that book was not, that was a B+ when I normally write an A+. But they should not be dismissed out of hand either. There's some damn fine writers writing that stuff. And also, that's a gateway drug, right? I mean, comic books probably.
Yes, it is.
I mean, comic books were probably the first things I ever read. Now I'm a voracious collector and reader of books.
But here's the thing that people forget about comic books. Comic books make storytelling accessible to kids.
Yeah.
Okay, in a way that no other medium does, other than maybe sitting on watching Johnny Quest on TV or something like that. Hang on a second. Right. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the blacksci-fi-society.com website. And today we are privileged to have Geoffrey Thorne, a former actor with such a small period of time in his life. Let's not even talk about it. But he's a fairly prolific writer. He does what do you call? I guess you call it a script, television scripts, short stories, and novels. So pay attention. And I have this embarrassing picture that he didn't like in front of me that you all can't see because I can't drop it in there. And I misidentified the TV show, so I've already shamed myself for the evening.
Yes, and you should be ashamed. You should be. I
am. Look, I'm horrified. Well, you know what? Let me tell you one of the things that I did in the service of becoming a writer. I started writing in 2001. I canceled cable. Okay, because I'm one of those dumbasses who, when he has the cable, has the movie channels.
Yes.
I feel like if I'm at home and I'm not watching them, I'm wasting money. And then you have to ask yourself. I finally got to the point where I started asking myself, well, how many stupid ass times are you going to watch Rocky this month just because it's on?
Wow.
So I severed from cable, and I don't have any antenna on any of my TVs here. So, and I've managed to maintain that, and I don't miss it as much. So, that's my only excuse for not knowing about, the outstanding show that you were on, blah, 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 blah.
Whatever.
Anyway.
I will say it's interesting because I don't play video games because they're too immersive, and I won't work. I'll just play the games, and I know that, so I don't play them. But from a writing a script point of view, as long as you're watching, you should watch some movies, and if you ever want to write for TV, you should watch television. It is a free education.
I agree, and even as I'm writing, I will more often than not, and this is not, I don't know if this is good or bad, more often than not, there's a movie running on one of my screens. I'm writing on the other screen. I've got the internet on another screen for research and stuff like that. And yes, I watch more movies than most people because I have the luxury of being home and doing that for more time than most people have available. And I'm very lucky.
Right.
I don't do that. I don't say that in ego or anything, but that is also in the service of improving my craft because eventually, this is what I've been told, that my trilogy is eventually going to either be movies or a miniseries. Mm-hmm. So even if I sell an option, I would love to have some input into how the screenplay is done. Although I know that that's ridiculous. I was at well, no. Let me finish why. Let me finish the story. I was at a networking meeting here in Chicago of aspiring screenwriter types, and Tim Kazurinsky was the featured speaker. He was on Saturday Night Live for a while.
Yeah, I know. He's a good writer, funny director.
And so there were people asking questions like, well, when you sell your screenplay or you get an option, can I sit on the set and make sure they do the words right? And I'm going, oh my God, and I think it's just merely because of ignorance of the
process. They don't know how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, but in when I say that there's a good chance I won't have that input, I'm not Stephen King yet. You know what I mean? In terms of being able to sit there and say, well, it plays better this way or that way, and actually have somebody listen to me.
Well, I'll say it like this: you're right to say I'm not Stephen King yet, but what it really boils down to is if you're selling a script as a script, then you're selling it. Whatever original thing.
It's gone. But you get your money and it's gone, yeah.
But if someone's optioning your book, you can stipulate anything you want in the contract and they can say yes or no.
That is true.
I mean, it's up to them how much trouble they want from the author. I will say this. I'm not kidding. But here's why. Ultimately, there's a difference between writing for television and writing for film. In many ways, there are many differences. But the fundamental difference is that writing for film, the writer is the weakest element of the feature. Directors make movies. The writer's script is so much more like a blueprint. That in many cases, if you read the original and you see the finished product, even if you love the finished product, you're like, oh my God, that's the greatest thing. Even if the product wins the Oscar for best screenplay, the script that was actually written and sold and decided to be made into a film might bear almost no resemblance to the final script. So,
well, even directors who write their own stuff. If you read The Godfather, and then you go and you read, Avatar, the scripts are completely different from what the writers actually filmed. So you're absolutely right.
But in television, the writer is considerably stronger. Almost every showrunner on a TV show is a writer who came up through the ranks. Writers, what we call producing our own shows, are actually on most shows. I don't want to go too far. Maybe slightly more than half of the shows. So some executive producers don't like us to do this, but on most shows that I've had contact with, and most of the ones my friends work on, the writer who writes the episode goes to the set, works with the director, works with the actors to. Am I breaking up?
No, there's two other people who have probably one of them might not have muted their call. They're on the line, so just keep talking. You're coming through okay. So we will go to the set and we'll work with the actors, rework scenes on the fly sometimes. The actors are having issues with certain kinds of lines, at least with me. And I think it is a plus having once been an actor. I will be very comfortable with, as long as you're getting, unless it's something that I needed specifically for plot purposes, or it's some gobbledygook made-up language that I've created, or there's some sort of scientific theorem that must be said properly or something like that, I generally try to have the words fit in the actor's mouth as comfortably as possible, right? So if something read great on the page, but the actor's having a hard time really saying it because it doesn't feel organic to them, then it's good to have the writer there, because then the two or three of you, including the director, can work out a better fix that doesn't hurt the overall production. But that's television. On a film, that writer's input is neither requested nor desired. So you have to be a big dog and put into your contracts what kind of final cut or whatever. And the odds of it, I would say, are low these days. But J.K. Rowling, she had approval if we got to make her Harry Potter novel. Stephen King eventually got approval on all of his projects, even though he was giant at the beginning. He didn't have that kind of control over the first few films that were made off of his book. Even though they were bestsellers. Yeah, I think the most famous example of this was Philip K. Dick with the first, 5, 6, 7 drafts of Blade Runner. And he was very upset, you know, and he said, I want my name off of this. And yet once they invited him to the rough cut of, you know, the movie that we've seen today, he was in tears saying, how did you get in my head? How did you see it? You know, and I mean, I think that's probably the best example of somebody, you know, how what can be contentious at the beginning can actually turn out well.
Yes, and then there's Harlan Ellison.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I mean, Harlan is a fantastic writer and versatile across multiple media, right? He can write books, write screenplays, write comics, whatever. But he's a big fan of don't screw my stuff up, right? If you contract to do my thing, actually do my thing, or there'll be hell to pay, right? But he's smart, because even when he was a little guy, those things are all in his contracts. So it really is how much you can negotiate for yourself. You know, you can't really yell at the guy when you signed the contract he presented with you, and then he shows up and says, I'm enforcing the contract. Well, you shouldn't have signed it if you don't like it. You know, I mean, it's just too bad.
Not only that, but see, the fact of the matter is he is a brilliant writer. And that makes the biggest difference in the world. If you have a great idea and a director and you know, a producer think that, okay, this is a great German idea, but we can really expand this out to be, you know, a blockbuster, you're pretty much, as a writer, you're out of the loop. You know, you've been paid, move along, please, you know?
Oh, I have a great friend of mine, a showrunner friend of mine, said point blank, first writer on is almost never the last writer on, right?
Absolutely.
You sell your thing, you write your script, they say, thank you very much, pat you on the head, kick you out the door. If you're very lucky, right before they go into actually produce, you know, into production, they'll bring you back for a polish, right? Clean it up, make sure everything flows right at the very end, right? But that's features. The writer is strong in television, and necessarily so. The pace is too fast. The work is too immediate. There's not the lag time between production and presentation. You basically are fighting a monster made out of time as soon as you agree to make a TV show. So everybody on any show, regardless of how simple the show might seem, right? Even the simplest one-room sitcom, which is 3 cameras and no one ever goes outside, even that is fighting this monster of deadlines. So you can't kick the writers out because they're the story generators, and therefore they're powerful. So yeah, that's why I do TV this way. I'm not a feature guy.
Yeah. Can we pivot to you mentioned comics before? Have you done comics or graphic novels?
Yeah, I've done a few. I've got some stuff I'm not allowed to talk about coming up. I did a thing for Lion Forge Entertainment. I rebooted the Knight Rider TV show as a comic book, but it was a complete reboot. So it's not a season 7 or whatever of the original series. It's a kind of what if there'd never been a Knight Rider, how would it be done now? So they asked me to do that, and I did it, and I was happy. My partner and I did a comic called Prodigal, which we're about to do a sequel to. I should say we're about to release a sequel to. You know, you can find that at thrillbent.com. And another one for Dark Horse Comics called Journeyman. And I've worked for a couple of independent companies in different ways. Robert Roach's Menthu, my partner and I did a segment for him, which I would love to have come out sooner rather than later, but that's all up to the publisher. I did a thing for a guy called, he's going to shoot me. The book's called The Honor Brigade, and I did a story called Suits for that, an anthology some years ago.
Well, I mean,
yes, the answer is yes.
Well, tell us a little bit, I mean, because, you know, a lot of people are kind of stuck in a single medium.
Okay.
You know, I don't
Honor
do
Brigade,
comics.
pardon me.
Yeah.
Honor Brigade. Did I say Honor Brigade or Hero Brigade? It's Honor Brigade.
I believe you did. You know what? I don't know. I can't remember because I'm old.
It's Honor Brigade. It's Honor Brigade.
Yeah. But, okay, the one that you did for Dark Horse, is that going to be a series?
The thing with Dark Horse is they have a thing called Dark Horse Presents,
Right.
For creators who own their properties to sort of show their wares via Dark Horse. Todd is my partner, Todd Harris. We have a unit. We call ourselves, if it was a band, it's just the two of us. We call ourselves John the 19.
Right.
And if we wanted to press Dark Horse to do a ongoing book or another big miniseries or miniseries at all, I'm certain that Dark Horse would say yes to that because we did well. It was critically well received and all of that. But Todd is a very high level, extremely talented pre-visualization and storyboard artist for the movies. He did John Wick. He did the Wolverine, Ninja Assassin, at least 2 of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies. He's the guy who sits with the director and works out how shots will actually look in the action sequences.
Sure.
And he is just a phenomenal artist, but the problem is, and it's a problem from my end as well, is when we started, both of us were sort of at the beginning of our careers, and we were churning out this material pretty fast and I think at a high level. But now we're both so busy, it's difficult for us to lock out the time for me to write and for him to draw new stuff. So we squeezed out Prodigal 2, called the Pandora Intelligence, which will definitely come out in 2016 for sure. We've already got issue 1 in the bed. Got 3 more to finish. And another thing that we're going to do later on that I'm not allowed to talk about because of non-disclosure agreements. And I worked for a couple of other companies that I'm also literally not even allowed to say who they are because of non-disclosure agreements. But, yeah, I love comics. I love writing them. I think it's fantastic media. It's different than books and different than movies. And bless you. I really get a huge kick out of it. I love it. There's no budget restraints for one thing.
Well, yeah, that's true. And so, you know, what kind of response do you get?
Tom Stillwell. Oh my God, Tom Stillwell runs Spinnerack Comics, the publication. He created the Honor Brigade and was gracious enough to to write a story for him, which I did. It was wonderful. Remembered. I remembered. I'm not dead yet.
Well, no, I mean, but being able to have such a stable of accomplishments, or at least works that you've finished, I mean, that speaks well of your talent, and it also speaks well of the respect that you have in the various communities. Otherwise, you wouldn't be getting work at this rate.
Yeah, I mean, you said it before early on. Talent is talent. I would rather be hardworking than talented. Talent is a nice thing when you're a child,
right?
You know, because talent is really a description of potential. It's you have an aptitude for something. It looks really cool. Look how naturally you were able to do that complex thing, right? But being naturally athletic or naturally acrobatic in some way doesn't mean you're ready for the Olympics,
right?
Or that you will ever get to the Olympics. But hard work, the ability to delay gratification and to go through. Let me put it like this: when I was a kid, my dad, I discovered in one of my dad's lockers or something, a closet or whatever, a guitar. I had never seen my father play the guitar. I had never heard him express any interest in music in that way. I mean,
right.
He loved music and all that the normal way. He'd listen to albums and dance and all that stuff. But there was never a sense that he would make any music of his own. It just never crossed his mind. Why would it? Right? So I find this guitar, and it had notes written on it to people like, "You're so great, you're so awesome, I love that song." And I'm like, what the hell is this? Right? So I take it to my dad, and this is when I was a toddler, you know, not a toddler, but like an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, something like that.
Sure.
What's this, Dad? What is this? He's like, oh, it's my guitar from the old days. I was like, well, it better be pretty old days because they predate me. I don't remember any of this. Like, yeah, this is before I met your mom. This is a long time ago. It's like, you used to play the guitar. Play the guitar. And he's like, no, I'm not going to play. And at first you're a little bit disappointed, but I kept bugging him about it. Finally got a little bit irritated. He's like, look, I'm not going to play the guitar, so stop asking me. And I was like, why, man? What's up? I wish I could play the guitar. He's like, and one day he finally told me, years later, he said one day he looked up and he realized he was never going to be as good as he really wanted to be, no matter how hard he practiced. And on that day, it became impossible for him to keep playing because it stopped being fun in any way. And I was like, are you stupid? Who cares? You can play the guitar, you know? And so the difference between my dad and me is that I know I'm never going to be Hemingway or somebody like that. Not that I particularly care about Hemingway. I think he's overrated. But I'm never going to be in the league of any of those people, nor am I trying to be. I just like telling stories a lot. So I'm willing to go through the crap part of telling a story, right? Everyone thinks the easiest thing in the world is come up with the beginning of something, right? The opening shot of anything. I give you no props for that. Openings are easy. Mm-hmm. Anyone can do an opening, a cool opening. The coolest opening in the world, some random guy that you meet in a line at a bus stop could tell you the greatest opening of a movie. That's nothing. But that part around page 138 in a novel where it just gets like, oh, Christ, it's not the end. We're finished with the beginning. I got to make sure these threads tie together, and this person has to meet so-and-so, and it has to be plausible, and oh, my God, I forgot I have to break her heart by page 150, and oh, my Jesus. That part of it, that's the sucky part. That's the part that they're paying you to go through, right?
That's
because
true. Or you're forcing yourself to go through it.
Right, because if you weren't being paid, one secret about most writers is if you can distract them with a shiny object, they'll stop writing and chase the shiny object, because writing sucks. On a certain level, it actually sucks because you have to force through the boring part, the part that's actually work, right? They're not paying you to have fun. It's work,
Yeah.
So when you get to the knots, when you get to the bumps, when you get to all that stuff and you have to slog through them, it's literally like going through the jungle with a dull machete, right? If you can't get through that period, you're not really a pro writer, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But a friend of mine said the other day, and I'm sure he was quoting someone, he said, perfectionism is the enemy of creativity, right? So my dad is a person who got to a line where he couldn't be perfect and said, okay, that's it for me. And I was like, who told you you were ever going to be perfect? Are you stupid?
Right.
Just keep pushing. Let's go. So what? History decides whether you were an artist in the first place, right? It's not you.
If not history, it's not, like you said, it's not you. Other people are going to make that determination, and it's what they say that sticks. It's not what
That's
you
correct.
say.
Yeah, it's got literally nothing to do with your opinion.
Yeah, when you publish your first novel, you have to wait till it's reviewed to find out where you sit in the pantheon of, writers great and small.
That's correct. And also, let's say it's terribly reviewed while you're alive. And
right.
You die in obscurity with one sock on, and you starve to death in your little garage in Baltimore or wherever. And then 10 years after you die, some other random group of people, not even critics, discover one of your books. And all of a sudden, you're the best thing since the Bible.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And that does nothing for you, but that's Edgar Allan Poe.
That's true. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So if you're worried about that, you really ought not to be in the game. You're just going to be in disappointment. Go have a life. Go do many fun things that are not writing. There are many other things that are more fun and more fulfilling. Right?
And that applies to all arts. I mean, look at Vincent van Gogh. He never knew that anybody found any value in his work. Plus, he had a mental illness at the same time.
Exactly right.
These trials and tribulations, they're not trivial, and it does. I know you said different way at the beginning, but it takes a rare individual to be able to push through and to keep doing it without a cheerleading squad, without outside external validation, without accolades for just, like you just described, getting through that slog when you get past the 130 pages. It was probably pretty clever to start out a book saying, "Call me Ishmael," but then when you're 580 pages into it, trying to get to the end where this big ass mammal is, these two mammals are battling it out.
Can he just kill them all? Can the whale just kill them all? I want to go.
Oh, man.
I've got a party to go to. My wife is me.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm saying, you get to this point where it's like, I know that the story is actually about something, but wouldn't it be great if someone just threw a bomb in and killed everyone and I could say the end and stop now?
Yeah, or you're doing something on spec and you're going to get paid whether it's great or not.
Yep.
But like we talked about earlier, if it's not, this could be your one opportunity, and you don't have that second opportunity to make a first impression. And then nobody comes back to you.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
Talent. So that's what we were talking about before, though. That's the difference. I would say that's why I don't give much value or credence to the notion of talent, because talent is just, wow, I'm going to write a book. Here I am on page 10. It's awesome. Anyone can do that. Literally anyone can do that. It's not special. There's nothing interesting about that. It's, can you make it work? It's like, what did he say? Michelangelo says, the sculpture's in the rock. I have to chip away every part of the rock that is not the sculpture, and then the sculpture will be revealed.
Exactly.
Right? But you say that, and everyone who understands that understands it. But everyone who doesn't shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I keep going back to is, try to learn the fundamentals of your art. If you are truly interested in being a writer, learn the freaking English language if you're going to write in English.
I agree.
Learn what sentence structure is. I had somebody give me a manuscript that had all of this stylized multi-font stuff, and it was very hard. It was very hard to read, and sometimes being clever in your own mind is not going to win the day.
No, I would say almost never.
Yeah, well, no, not almost never, because, then we have some whiz-whacker who writes 50 Shades of Grey on her BlackBerry, and the lightning struck.
But wait, again, no one will ever accuse that book of being good. Okay?
That's true. That is
even
true.
The people who like it, even the people who like the book will never, it's a great book. It isn't. It's pornography. And I have nothing against pornography, but 50 Shades of Grey and all other pornography has one goal in mind, and it isn't the sublime appreciation of a beautifully told story, right? It's to get the person reading it off.
Yep.
Okay? So insofar as a majority of, I would say, fairly repressed women pick up 50 Shades of Grey, read it, and get off, that's an incredibly successful novel. It does what it was setting out to do.
Yes, it does.
I don't believe anyone who's not writing porn has anything to learn from a book like that. Someone who is writing porn should read the hell out of it. But I think that one can confuse a successful story, which is a story that comes out the way you wanted it to and pushes the buttons in the other person that you wanted to push, with a that's what I would call a successful story. With a monetarily or commercially successful story, which that's a crapshoot. It just is a crapshoot. That's where the tyranny of luck comes back in. Here's a good example of that. My first short story, Redshift, I shopped around to a bunch of places, right? I got rejection letters. Stephen King's famous for talking about the railroad spike with his filled up with his rejection letters. I didn't get that many, but I wasn't writing as prolifically either. And I got told no a lot of times. The problem with rejection letters is, for the most part, editors don't have time to say why they rejected it. All they say in their form letters, it didn't suit our needs at the moment. Now, a talented person will go, oh, I must suck now. The editors don't like my work, which isn't necessarily so. The truth is what they said in the thing. It does not fit our needs right now. Okay? So if there are 15 editors and you stop at editor 5 because the first 5 went, I don't like your story, well, that's talent, right? The person who's actually a writer goes through all 15, and even if they all say no, puts it in a book, puts it in a desk drawer somewhere, writes another story, sends that out, and in a few years sends the original story back out, sometimes to the same original editors, some of whom, right, will say, oh, wow, this is great. This does suit our needs right now. Here, let me buy the story I rejected 2 years ago. It's completely arbitrary, So if you're putting all your eggs in the basket, if someone must pay me a shitload of money, here I go swearing again, if someone must pay me a huge stack of money to prove that I am a valuable contributor to the writing profession, then you're kind of missing the boat again, because that's kind of not what it's about. I've sold stories to people who rejected me before. I've sold to the same editor, sending them 3 stories. They'll reject 2 of them and buy 1, or 4 stories, and they'll reject 3 of them and buy 1. You know,
sure.
Same writer, same ability to write, same quote unquote talent, but those 3 other stories just weren't right. They weren't what they wanted. So too bad for writer X. On the other side,
and the other part, you know. Okay, go ahead.
I'll stop 1 second. On the other side of that, one of the most gratifying things about selling in print rather than in the screen world. In the screen world, at some point you have to have a meeting with someone, right? You have to meet them face to face, shake hands with them, see if they like the cut of your jib, so to speak. All that crap, all that stuff that people go through to get a job, basically. But when you're writing just stories and sending them out to editors, you know for a fact when that editor buys your story, they don't care at all who you are. They don't care how old you are. They don't care if you're young or straight or gay or female or foreign or a polygamist living on a compound in Utah. They don't care. All they care about is this story does what I need it to do for my magazine or my publication or my publishing house. Here's some money. Thank you very much. And as soon as that happens, you walk out of that room going, I'm a real writer now. Because those guys don't owe me nothing, and they paid me a lot of money. That's where the money aspect comes in. It proves that someone valued the product you made enough to sell it. That's it. It's not a quality judgment. It's this is real. You are real. Go forth and write more things.
Well, and it is a validation of the fact that somebody feels that you have added value to whatever it is they want,
exactly
either a
right.
TV script or a movie script or an anthology or whatever. Yeah, and you know, but then it's only after a few of those do you get to look at yourself and go, okay, I've had serial successes. This seems to indicate that I am plying my craft properly, at least from a commercial perspective. Because as you said, you may not be the best writer in the world. You know, you may be an average writer, but if you hit that timing where somebody goes, this is exactly what I need, or this is this is great, then you know, it's partly the tyranny of luck, but it's also partly just circumstance. Right place, right time, and don't get an ego about it, because know, the very next 25 things that you submit everywhere could be rejected for the exact same reason. They don't fit our needs at this time.
I had a teacher. This is going back to what we said in the first hour. When I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts, I had an acting teacher there, Don Elise. I don't know if he was quoting someone. I think it might have been Stanislavski, or he might have made this up himself. But he always used to tell us, love the art in you, not you in the art. Right? And as a younger man, I didn't quite get it until I started sort of really taking acting seriously and the art seriously. But what it means is, if you're standing around going, dig me, look at me, I'm a writer, do that at home in your mirror and don't let me know that you do it. You'll be kind of done. But when you sit down, whether somebody's paying you $500 or $50,000 or zero, as long as you agreed to do it, bring your A game. Respect the fact that you're trying to do something worthwhile and put your name on it, and that's you loving the art in you. But looking at yourself going, dig me, I'm big king writer. That makes you just kind of a jerk with a pen, you know, like So. That's what I'm saying about that school. Put an indelible, permanent mark on my artistic soul, if there is such a thing, and that's one of the things that will never that pushes you through, that lets you slog through and wrestle the beast of the stupid novella. It's only stupid because it's beating my butt right now. When I win, it will not be stupid; it will be genius. But right now,
yes, of course,
so, you know. But you know. Anyway, so blah blah blah. What were you saying?
And the B part of this entire endeavor, the B part of setting out to be a writer, is the fact that you have started a business. You know, you have started a business. You're an entrepreneur, and what you're doing is your bakery goods are really what you're writing. And the part about what you said is A, when you have that meeting, bring your A game, but B, also study up on the business of doing business.
Yes,
because to have really stupid expectations is going to reveal you to be foolish and may lose you work. So like the guy who says, well, when I sell an option to my work, can I demand? Well, yeah, you can demand, but you're not going to get it.
That's correct.
So always bring your A game, and my parents always taught me, be gracious with people who you meet, because even though maybe the first time things didn't go well, if you're an asshole that first time, you don't get a second time.
That's true.
Somebody may come back around and go, hey, remember that Japanese Negro from Chicago who did he had, well, no, I'm serious. I mean, that's how things happen.
You're not wrong. You're absolutely not wrong. It takes a lot for a person in business to get on my bad side, I have to say. I tend to give allowances for it's just stressful life. It has happened on occasion.
Sure.
And because I think you have to kind of go out of your way to be a jerk when it's a situation like that. But, like you said, they're not paying you to come and hang out and, eat sushi at their house. You know what I mean? Like, it's a business. You're coming in.
Yeah.
If you were a plumber, you would have no illusions, right? You're going to come in. You're going to say, here's what's wrong with your plumbing. Here's what's going to cost for me to fix it. Here's what the labor will be. Here's how long I'll be in. Here's how much destruction I'll do to your house. Here's how quickly I'll clean it up. All of that stuff. There will be no ego involved except I'm the best plumber you can get for this money. That will be the single point, right? And I'm always reminded of that scene from Moonstruck where, written by the great John Patrick Shanley. God, he's such a great writer. Where the Cosmo character is like, look, I'm trying to sell you copper. I know you're mad because copper's more expensive, right? So you think I'm trying to screw you over by selling you the more expensive thing. But the reason copper is more expensive is because it's going to save you money. It costs money now, but it's going to save you so much money in the long term, right? And the other person thinks you're trying to put one over them. But that's really the thing with really any business, right? You want to be the practitioner who shows up and says, look, yes, it's going to cost you a certain amount of money, but you're paying for all those years of practice. You're paying for my expertise. You're paying, for the safety of walking away and knowing it will be done right the first time, right? So if you don't want to pay that, that's fine, but you don't get to squawk about it if that's my price because I've earned that price.
Right. And that's the other thing that people also should pay attention to. Get some advice at the beginning when you're starting out on how to negotiate, because you don't get paid what you deserve. You get paid what you negotiate.
That's correct.
And that's a tough, in some ways that's a tough kind of thing to grasp for people, because they think, well, they're obviously going to pay me what I'm worth. They're obviously going to pay me what the value of this is. I'm going to get that $30,000 for that script for that one episode of the sitcom. And no, you don't just automatically get it. It's what you negotiate. And don't do your own damn legal work if you're not don't do your own damn legal work if you're not a lawyer either.
Well, I think a lot of that also comes down. I think a lot of that also comes down to people's connection to the arts is really for the large part of most people's lives. Their only real connection to the arts is as end users, really, as consumers.
Sure. Right.
And what happens is part of the music industry is, I think, most guilty of this in terms of making things look easy. Like, I remember when I became aware of the business of music, which I wasn't as a kid, obviously. I just liked the albums I liked. But when hip-hop started really getting big, you started seeing all these stories about hip-hop artists that were huge in their region, right? Too Short, Sir Mix-a-Lot, NWA, people like that, where record companies didn't really know what was going on with hip-hop, but knew that all these kids were buying all this stuff. Like, well, if we're losing money, we need to absorb these artists. How come we don't have these artists? And almost to a man or woman, they would go to these people in this period of time and say, okay, here's our standard rich and famous contract. And they'd read it and go, yeah, but I'm already famous where everybody already knows me, and I got to tell you, this contract, you're cutting into my payday.
Yep.
You're going to have to come back with something better. And the reason they could do that was that they were sitting on a giant pile of money and a huge fan base, right? So they could comfortably say no and walk out the door. The person who can really say no and really mean it is the one who wins. But most people, especially writers, because especially a starting out writer, they have this illusion based on reading all these magazines and watching all these ridiculous reality shows that that's how it flows for everybody. But really, for 99% of us, like you said early on, your first book, that's not going to be your blockbuster. You might get a contract. It might even be a pretty good one, but it's not going to blow the doors off. You're going to have to keep swinging. I got a friend who's a best-selling writer. She's been a best-selling writer for almost a decade, maybe over a decade. She's got 2 ongoing series, right, that are New York Times bestsellers every time she drops a book. After all that time, she finally quit her day job, like last year, I think.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, that's the real world. So if you're not in connection with that, if you have no interest in connecting with that, if you're not, like you said, if you're not willing to do the due diligence of finding out what it actually is before you get into it, then you deserve the lumps you get, from my point of view. I don't have much sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and you know, just so that you know, we're winding down. We got about 15 minutes to go. Let me ask you this:
Okay.
What's been the most valuable lesson that you've learned being basically an entrepreneurial writer?
Say yes a lot early.
Okay.
Even if the initial money seems small, say yes if it's something you know you can knock out of the park.
Okay.
Because that will be a credit. People read resumes; they don't read the book.
Oh,
right?
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
Most of the people who claim they've read my work have maybe skimmed some of it. They look at the long, fat resume and go, wow, he's worked for all these other people. He must be good. They don't read it and decide for themselves, which they really should. But you know what? That's fine with me because I keep getting employed. And the other thing is, if you find a person who's a plain dealer, keep them close. If you find, they don't have to be nice. You don't even have to really like them. But if you know that they're straight and they're not full of crap, hold tight to them. Hold tight to them.
It is kind of rough finding an honest broker, these days, because everybody aspires to be the top of some sort of food chain, and but not everybody has the integrity, the honesty, or the skills to maintain that. Yep.
And I would also say, don't get so focused. There's a couple of good ones. You should never get so focused on getting the thing you want that you forget to live your life. Live your actual life. Life is more important than anything you will do. It's more important. It's more important than any book you write. It's more important than any party you're going to go to. It's more important than any award you'll ever win. Just filling up your life with cool shit. There we go, swearing again. Sorry. Just fill your life. Don't neglect your real life. And learn. And always be learning.
Yeah, one of the things that I always want to do with my friends who, anybody who has, the thunderbolt strike them and they have a spate of good fortune, and they think, well, I've got all this money. The first thing I want to do is I want to tie them to a chair and over one weekend have them watch every episode of VH1's Behind the Music so that they can learn all the things they're not supposed to do.
That's a class. That's a college course right there. I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, people forget. They think I think what it is I think what you said, the lightning bolt. Because I knew a guy who got the lightning bolt, hit him, and he was luckily mostly prepared for the sudden sort of catapult into, wow, I'm a successful actor now,
Sure.
But it isn't a lottery win. For most of it, it's grinding, man. I mean, acting was grinding. It was going to a million.
It's a baby step.
Yeah, and seeing people who look almost exact. Everyone I saw was someone who could have been in my own family because we're all up for the same role. So we're basically like each other's brother, right? Nearly a twin brother. You see 20 guys who look basically like you trying for the same part over and over and over again. It's not a lightning bolt. It's not a lottery win. It's gladiatorial. You're going in there swinging, and and you're coming out bloody, and it's not personal. The other gladiator would rather you just not fight. He doesn't want to kill you. He just wants to win. You know.
Right.
And so, if you can't see it that way, again, go be a janitor, go be a lawyer, go be something that lets you have a life, because this stuff eats your whole life. And if you can't see it for what it actually is and do it anyway, then you really shouldn't be in it, because it'll break you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just everybody across the board. It's just, it's not for everyone, and a lot of people think it is.
And let's go back to what we were talking about the first time. Over that 8 years, when you pivoted away from acting and you said, I want to write.
Yeah.
What sustained you for those 8 years? Because that's a lot of damn days of getting up and looking at yourself in the mirror.
My wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. But like you said earlier, Susan, in the parlance of the street, is a ride or die chick.
Okay.
We had our fights, we had our disagreements. There were times we thought we might not last, but at the end of the day, she had confidence in the fact that the work that I was producing was quality. Like you could read it and compare it to other things and go, it's kind of a matter of time with this one, right?
Sure.
It's more like, and this is the thing about luck. This is the perfect thing about luck. Picture a merry-go-round, right? Almost all of the horses have riders on them, and the thing's spinning around and spinning around. And it's going kind of fast, and you'd like to jump on. You try to jump on once, but you miss, and you hit the thing, and it knocks you back, and you fall down. But that seat's still empty, and it's going to swing around again, right? So all you really have to do is get the timing. As soon as you get the timing, you're on that merry-go-round. This is sort of the equivalent of being a writer, I think, except getting knocked down when you get back up and dust yourself off. Part of it is, okay, I did something wrong. I need to readjust my skill set. I need to add something to my skill set. I need to polish this. I need to fix that. Oh, here comes the horse again. I'll jump. And then you jump. And you get hit and you don't quite make it and you fall down again. So it's not a freaking lottery win. It's you refining your ability to hit a target. And you need someone. You don't need someone. It's easier with someone at your back. Some people have done it where it's just them and they just have that iron will. That's like, I know it's going to work for me. And God bless those people. I wish I was one of them. If I had been alone, completely alone during all that time, I was nearly alone. But if I had been completely alone, who knows? But to be able to have someone go, I read this. I don't even like, my wife doesn't even like speculative fiction, by the way. But she's read some of my stuff. She's like, yeah, you can do this. You're good. You're good to go. Don't let the don't let the bad taste fool you this week. You're good to go. So that helped me a lot. And the fact that I got incremental success, it was never gigantic. It was never the giant sort of, kid, you're a star now. But if every year you sell a couple of short stories to people you've never met, you don't suck.
No, and that's that validation and encouragement that more often than not gives you the impetus to keep going.
That's correct. It's all you need. It's a little ladder rungs. I think it's what you said again before, the expectation of this instant crazy Beyonce-level stardom, that's going to break you because that ain't happen. The reason it's a news story is because it doesn't happen that often, right? When you do hear it makes the news because it almost never happens. So
yeah, and that's a lot like trying to choose the lottery as your retirement program.
That's your
you have retirement. To be smart about it. Yeah.
That's my fallback career is winning the lottery.
Yeah, well, I've done the math, and at least for Mega Millions and Powerball, you have almost the exact chance of winning whether you play or not. So that's it is true. I've done the math. I'm Japanese, man. I've worked that out.
Stop it.
But okay, and then as far as, I mean, obviously having someone to support you is good. What kind of feedback were you getting early on? Were you getting feedback from anyone other than your wife for the things that you were selling? Obviously, having a sale is feedback enough in terms of what your value was to a publication or to a production studio or whatever.
Yeah. What kind of feedback
did you get?
All right. Here's the thing. And it could be considered. Here's the problem: this advice, if you give it to a crazy person, is going to make for a life of hell. But if you give it to a rational person, it's the same advice. Is this? I would get rejection slips from short stories that I would send out, and they would be these form letters. Stephen King tells the same story. I presume every freelance writer has a similar story.
Sure.
And they're clearly form letters. Some of them back in the old days were Xerox. You could see the faded ink on some of them. Like, this is something they do a lot, right? So you're just getting like form letter 9,000 of the week of, no, we're not buying your stupid story, right? But the soft writer, the weak writer, immediately goes, oh, it's a judgment of me, right? This person is acting out to get me. They hated my stuff. They hate me. This is a personal insult. They're basically saying, screw you, which is not at all. That's way too much energy. It just wasn't the story they wanted that week, right? So what happened was, after a while, I started getting these little notes in the margin from the editor. Not buying this story. Send us some more stuff. That's it. Not, you're great. Not, this was almost perfect. This was 99%. We would have bought it if it was 100, right? I got a great rejection letter on a book that was, we wrestled with this one. This was actually written out on the form letter. We wrestled with this, but we felt it was too, what's the word? It was too tongue-in-cheek, too ironic, too meta for this straight-down-the-line kind of publication that we wanted.
Sure.
If you have another, send us another. Now, the average person, what I call the weak writer, will go, well, who cares? It was just a rejection. They were trying to be nice. And I'm like, why? Why were they trying to be nice? Why would they care? And the rejection letter solves the problem. I'm not coming back at them. They just send me the form letter. They move on with their day. Why would they take time out of their busy schedule to write me a personal note, send me more stuff if you want? Right? It makes no sense. The reason is they thought I was. The reason is they thought I was good, but they weren't going to buy this. So the successful writer takes those rejection notes as, didn't sell it, move on. The unsuccessful writer goes, oh my God, I sucked like I always thought I sucked. This person is validating the fact that secretly I always knew I sucked. I better quit, you know. And frankly, the answer is, yeah, you better quit, because if you can't take that, you need to get out of the game. But in reality, it's just, you have to stay in. You got to keep your head down, keep writing, keep acting, keep whatever it is, getting better at it in theory, and keep at it. So what got me through was I kept getting slightly better rejection letters. Does that even make sense? Where you started to feel like the editor was getting what you were going for and that you were getting better at it. Right. And then sooner or later, you're going to hit a critical mass and start selling stories. And wow, 3 years in, guess what happened? But it was 3 years, man.
Yeah, but but as you look back now, 3 years wasn't crap in terms of developing a career.
Oh, absolutely not. Right.
Yeah,
absolutely
and
not.
you know, one of my favorite cartoons is from Dave. I think his name is Dave Coverley.
Okay.
And there's a woman who's obviously a writer sitting across from an editor. And the editor says, we loved all the words in your manuscript, but we were wondering if you could maybe put them in a completely different order.
Yeah, there's that too. There's definitely that. But also, like that's what it is. That's what sustains you. If you're looking for the giant payday, yeah, it can happen, but it's just as likely as a lightning strike, probably less so, right?
Sure.
If you're comfortable with incremental advancement, then you can stay. Right, because that's what it is. It's incremental, you know. And
you have to be there. There's a certain amount of devotion and commitment that you just simply have to make, because and you know the lightning is not always there, and you know that's why they call it lightning. So if you're serious about something, I mean, come on, when you first jumped on a two-wheel bicycle, were you able to ride it? You know, you ask people, when you first started driving a car and you had to parallel park, didn't you bump into somebody's bumper, maybe a little bit too hard?
I still can't drive a stick. I'm never going to learn how to drive a stick. It's just too hard.
Having four of your limbs moving at the same time?
Yeah, that's too much. I'm not dealing with that. That's why God gave us automatic. So.
All right, okay. But seriously though, you know, when you decide that you're going to be a writer, you know, whether it's screenwriting, short stories, what have you, that you have to put in your dues, and your dues are not like running and getting coffee for the management. Your dues are writing, submitting, being rejected, and using every single rejection to try to get better or to try to understand what it is that they really want so you can provide that. Sometimes you're just a great writer, and like you said, what you sent them wasn't what they wanted that day, but that does not diminish nor invalidate your worth as an artist,
Right. The very hard part, and this goes back to trying, I think I learned a lot in the period of time when I was being an illustrator, because you got a very clear, very instant, this is not good enough, because we can both look at the art and point at why it's not good enough. So it rubs your ego off, but it also forces you to make a financial decision. What I do is commercial art. It's not fine art. It's not art for art's sake. I do art to sell it. So I have to have a reasonably sharp idea of where I stand in the marketplace, or I cannot improve my product, right? So if a person who's trying to be at the beginning of the game, the first skill they have to learn is how to accurately assess their work, right? Most writers think one of two things when they start out. I'm a genius and the world doesn't appreciate me. Screw you, I'll show you when I get on top. Okay? No, you're not a genius. You're not screwing anybody, and the odds of you being on top are remote because there is no top, right?
Right.
But the other thing that they think is, I suck. Everything I write is hard-fought. Blood comes out of my eyes when I write it, and it's terrible, and I shouldn't show it to anyone, but they made me show it to this person, and oh, my God, I got a rejection. Yes, I knew it. The universe is confirming I suck. No, you don't. You don't suck. I mean, some of you do. Probably most of you do suck a little bit. But everybody, like you said, starts with training wheels. Every endeavor starts with not knowing how to do the thing very well, right? So manage your expectation and learn. But you're neither a genius nor are you crap. If you could get both of those extremes out of your way, you might end up being a writer at some point.
Well, and you have to be persistent. You have to have this the gumption enough to realize that, first of all, there are literally tens of hundreds of thousands of writers out there, and all of us independents struggle with the same thing. We struggle with the challenge of raising our voices above the background noise so that we can be noticed. And there's some of that lightning associated with that too. There's some of that right place, right time. There's some of that, like you said, knowing the right person so that they can be your disciple for you. But the fact of the matter is, it's a well understood, well known process. And unless you know somebody who's really going to proselytize for you, there are no shortcuts.
No, there are no shortcuts. There's no hookup. There's no secret handshake. There's no backroom deal you're going to make. If you weren't born Gwyneth Paltrow, and most of us weren't, right, it's work.
Right.
And if you're not going to bite, you better bite down on that early, because that's what it is.
Yeah. Hey, look,
by
man,
the way,
yes.
Okay, we have 1 minute. Amanda Hawking made herself a millionaire writing ebooks. Okay, nobody knew who the hell she was. Just look her up. You'll see. Her name is Amanda Hawking, and she became a multimillionaire writing the kind of basically fan fiction books that she wanted to write. She didn't know anybody. Someone discovered her book, told some other people. They all liked it. Then and all of a sudden, wow, I'm making so much money. Big 6 companies want to buy my contract out.
Sure.
Okay, that's not a lightning strike. That's somebody working hard and hitting the right tone. So be that person and hope for the best.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to thank you for spending time with me. I hope it didn't seem to drag at all.
No, it's awesome. I love it.
All right, and then and then it'll be available for as a podcast probably within a few hours, probably no later than tomorrow morning, so that you can link to that. I'd like to thank you for being here. I want to thank everybody who listens, who picks this up as a podcast. Reminding everyone that the actual show starts at and hang on after the show ends, just in case anybody has any other questions for you. For those of you who do listen to this, you know that the show starts right around 9 p.m. Eastern time. Tell your friends. Get us whatever support you can get, because there's some pretty cool things happening at blacksciencefictionsociety.com. There's content
Great.
there that you won't see anywhere else. You won't see the art except there. There's a plethora of stories and ads for books. So please support blacksciencefictionsociety.com, and we will keep bringing you really cool people like Geoffrey Thorne here
Well,
for the show.
Better one.
Well, no, I mean, you made it very, very easy, and for me, and I appreciate that because I like smart people. I like people who have something to offer, because that's what we want to do. We want to show people how someone else did it, and maybe you can learn something from them. So again, thank you for spending your precious time with us, especially a Friday night. I really appreciate it.
Oh my God.
And I know Jarvis is or was in a car. I don't know if he's going to be able to jump on. His phone should be muted. Well, he usually closes out the show. But hang on a second. If Jarvis is driving.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hello?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. I just sorry about that. I had to go pick my son up from he's been having track meets and stuff, and so
What?
Yeah, he's like number 8 in the nation in pentathlon with the AA.
Holy crap!
Yeah, and so he's always active either with football or with his football track team. He runs with both his school team and with the local team. So we stay pretty busy, and I went to pick him up and come back from that meet. And so I'm kind of bushed, and I have to be back up in probably about 6 hours.
Oh, poor you.
I'm going to try to hold on a few more minutes, but I was listening.
That's awesome.
And I'm so glad that you guys were on here sharing and discussing all these really relevant issues in the industry and sharing your experience with us, because like William said, you bring value to the table. We love that. And you have actual industry experience.
Hey, you guys, you set up a great website. It's been nothing but getting stronger and stronger. I've listened to the podcast on occasion, and it's always enlightening. What's not to love, man? It's just great all around.
Well, thank you very much. We do our best to get the best here, and like I said, you made this so easy. Time flew. You had great stuff to talk about, and seriously, I mean, it makes a big difference. And thank you again. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And then,
thank you for having me.
If you're going to be, I know you don't travel much, but if you're going to be at a convention, if you're going to be having an appearance or something, try to think about putting it on the BSFS events calendar, because people look at that calendar to see what's going on around the nation, around the world, actually. And if somebody sees that you're going to be in Anaheim or whatever, for whatever reason, making an appearance, then maybe they're going to show up, and you get to meet somebody from BSFS.
I'll definitely be at San Diego because I'm on a panel. So I'll be at the San Diego Comic-Con for sure this year, at least one day. Cool. And I'll keep people on the website posted as to what the panel is and when and all that.
All right, then. And so on behalf of everybody else, I see Jarvis muted himself, but
okay.
Jarvis, go ahead. Why don't you finish up and close out the show?
Love, peace, and hair grease.
Classic.
Oh, my God.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right, bye-bye. Thank you.
Hang on, Geoffrey.
No worries.
We're just waiting for Jarvis to...
All right, no worries. Actually, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Just 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back.
All right. So Jarvis hasn't stopped the show, but you can say anything you want now because this will all be edited out.
Oh, okay.
Did we cover everything you wanted to cover?
You know what? I always go into these things just kind of cold and see how it goes. I know I'm supposed to like come in and plug something and here's and go to my. But no, I thought it was lovely. We had a great conversation. We got to say some good stuff. I always try to put over the stuff that I wish someone had told me when I was starting out, and I think we did that perfectly. So
yeah,
no, I don't have anything to add. I think it's great.
I think managing expectations is probably the hardest thing people have trouble with at the beginning, because if they don't know, if they have no body of knowledge, if they haven't experienced it, it's tough,
Yeah, it's true.
So,
and also you can start to feel like people are telling you to not have your big dream, and that's not what the person's saying. It's like they're more like they're telling you you can have that thing, but if you think about it in more realistic terms, you're more likely to actually get it.
Right. Right. And then to not quit just because.
Yeah, because that way it won't break you when you get a rejection or when somebody says no, because they're mostly going to say no.
Yeah.
Like mostly it's no. The answer is mostly no. So if you're expecting, I'll get 3 no's and then a big giant yes, and then you get to your 5th no and you're like, where's my yes? Where's my yes? It's like, well, dude, lady, keep swinging. There's no guarantee.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm probably going to pick up one of these Star Trek books that you wrote, just because I haven't touched in that universe for a long time, so that'll be fun.
I would. My stuff's a little out there. I would say, you know what? Yeah, pick up a book called Voyager: Distant Shores.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
It's an anthology. There's a lot of good stuff in there. You'll also note that I think, all the stuff that I've written involves at least one prominent minority character for Star Trek. That's not an actor.
Yeah, I forgot to ask you about that, because that would have been interesting to see how, being black suggests in your writing. But we'll do that next time we get you on the show. How's that sound?
Anytime you want. Just give me, you guys are nice and flexible, because I know we were supposed to do this last week and I couldn't because I had stuff to do. But
right.
Like family stuff to do. But basically, my life is around writing. So if you guys give me a week's advance, I can be back whenever.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you much. I hate to jump off early, but someone's coming by to take me out to a late dinner.
Go do your thing, man. Have a real life.
I will. It's bad enough I do this every Friday night, and sometimes I don't want to bitch about it, but
no, you don't.
Because, you know what? Here's the cool thing. I get to meet people like you. What is bad about that? There's nothing bad about that.
That's exactly what I say. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And by the way, you gave me good advice about my cough, which I will be implementing in about an hour. So awesome.
Oh, yeah. So cool enough with that. If it wasn't for medical school, I'd be a doctor.
Stop it.
Well, it's true. I mean, like those sorts of things, allergies, things like that. Everybody has, I don't want to say everybody, but there are people who have an insight or they know a trick, and that's my trick. And because I have to use my voice all the time, I cough every now and then, but other than that, you can't not have a voice. Do you know about this trick? If you lost your voice because of inflamed vocal cords and stuff, all you have to do is crush up 4 plain aspirin in an ounce of warm water and gargle. And then spit. Don't swallow it.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah, I get
and
it.
It knocks the inflammation right out, and your voice comes back for 20 minutes, half an hour. Usually that's enough for the. Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Well, hopefully we'll talk soon in the future. You know, maybe
Whatever
you'll
you
see my Japanese name out there writing about black issues.
I will now look for it. Let me put it like that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks
All
so
right, man.
much,
Take care.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.